We're going to start in just a moment. In the meantime, I'm going to share my screen and the question is, can you see the screen which says hold tight, we are about to begin? Okay, welcome everyone. We are, you have come to the webinar that is about divine timing and how the fourfold world is responsible for all of your divine timing. And I am sagely, I'm going to actually pause for just a moment, stop sharing my screen and say hi. Really great to see you. I have a new background, my new orange background, because the place where I usually do my webinars is now in, it's got about 500 pounds of wood for a new floor that we're putting into our house right in the middle of it. So I had to move my spot, and I'm kind of liking my orange curtain, really liking the fact that you are here. And I'm going to go back to my slides. Just wanted to say hi and to see that I'm here and really happy that you're here also. So let me just find those slides again. I'm going to share the screen, which is going to do this weird thing for just a moment before I go back to the preview and then go to the full screen so that you can see just the material that we're looking at. So magic is just technology we don't understand yet. And I was really made aware of this weekend when I did a dry run of our Circus for the Senses, Circus of the Senses workshop. And I was at the Integratron, which is this scientific, amazing structure that has been built that no one can figure out how to work. It was built in the 50s under the instructions from something in the divine realm, and the plans disappeared along with some pieces to make it. And currently, this place is right out in the middle of the desert in Southern California in Landers. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that if we have time later on. But look, Arthur C. Clarke was right. Magic is just technology that we don't yet understand. So this is divine timing, how the fourfold world makes everything happen. And you're going to get we're going to talk about divine timing, of course, but in order to understand divine timing, you have to understand how the divine actually works, right? How everything in the universe actually gets created, and it's on a system. And this system wasn't just created by a bunch of geeks somewhere. This system is in use, and it was discovered by actually observing the way things got constructed. I'll say more about that in a moment, but for right now, I just want to acknowledge you for having even an inkling that you're already a wizard. I believe, you see, that you already are. Really, that you already are and always have been. And that there are just some things that they forgot to teach you when you were young, when you were in school. In fact, some things that they untaught you that you knew. And I'm here to rectify that through this series of webinars and through the School for Wizards that I'm very committed to. So here is your quote for today. It comes from Marcus Katz and Tally Goodwin. This is the quote that is going to inform everything that we talk about today. And it's part of a larger quote. I'm going to give you the rest of it near the end. We'll put all the pieces together. And so stay on to the end to hear the rest of the quote. The universe does not plan, nor do we do. We plan, and the universe does. When we reverse this simple truth in our lives, we believe in problems. But the universe has no such problems. The universe has no such problems. So we are going to be doing some training to be more like the universe, to be more problem-free. But first, I want to tell you a little bit about why I'm so excited about teaching you about the practical aspects of magic. And the first one I told you on the last webinar, but I can't help it. I have to tell you again. This is the story of the bird and the candle. And I'm supposed to say something like, oh, well, you know, my life is great now, but it hasn't always been this way. The truth for me, though, is that I have always been a wizard. I've always been a wizard. And all I had to do was just look back into my childhood and go, oh yeah, I was doing that. I was doing that when I was a child. And this is a story of how I made contact with the bird realm in a really powerful way. And it's almost unbelievable. You just have to suspend your disbelief, recognize that I'm just telling you the truth. This really did happen to me. And I had created a candle with prayers in it. And you can do this for yourself. You can create a candle. You know, this was a regular taper candle, and I wrote some prayers on it of things that I wanted to occur. And I wrote on it with a Sharpie, and then I wrote on it, and then I carved the Sharpie out so that I took a lot of time with this candle, and I decided to burn it on a very special day. So it was burning, and I was downstairs in my home doing some work, and my partner said, "Hey, what's that sound?" And it was this sound that was like, brrr, brrr. I said, what's that sound? I don't know what that sound is. And he goes, I think it's your computer. And I said, well, no, my computer's not on. And so I looked over at where the candle was burning. And there, sitting next to the candle, was a mourning dove. And it was just sitting next to the candle. Now, why in the world a dove should fly into someone's house and toward flame, I really have no idea. But I knew it was there. I'm like, and he was in the other room, and I said, it's a dove, it's a bird. And for some reason, I raised my hand up, as a gesture to it, to gesture toward it. And the bird flew from its little perch next to the candle and landed on top of my head. Now, it's probably just the tallest thing to land on, but I thought it was very significant that the bird had flown in to be next to a candle and then flown on my head. So I just walked toward the door, and as soon as I got to the doorway, the bird flew away. But it was really an indicator that something in the unseen world was moving. You can't ignore those things. And so I didn't grow up in a little home like this. In some ways, I wish I did. It's a little small. And the home I did grow up in was small, but, it was a sort of, kind of middle class, a little bit lower middle class, asbestos siding home, tiny little bedrooms, washer and dryer were kind of inside the house. There wasn't a laundry room. Really, but here's the thing. My parents, they said they couldn't afford to do it, and I believed them. They couldn't afford to clear the lot that their home was on. So all of the rest of the lots, and they were these big kind of third of an acre lots, it wasn't huge, but third of an acre is big, a big enough lot. And everyone else had lawn. So you have to picture my yard was like, it was like everybody else's, like lawn, lawn, lawn. And then my yard was forest. And it was filled with these like tertiary growth hardwood trees, like sweet gum trees and oak trees and stuff like that. And one by one over the years, because they were the tallest things in the entire neighborhood, no one else had a home like this, the lightning struck them one by one, and so there was this really special sort of electromagnetic place that I grew up in. And it really was forested, very much like this little lot here. And like I said, with the bird, you have to really pay attention to what's happening. Well, there were moments in time when I really had to pay attention. Like, I grew up in the Southern Baptist Church, and God bless my parents and their people and my brothers and so forth, because they stayed with the church. And this is what the Dalai Lama says is, just stay with the church that you grew up in if you can, because that's how you can do the most good in the world. And I was sort of prepared to do that. And in the Baptist church, you have to dedicate your life to Jesus. And the way that they do that is they sing this thing called the doxology, which is like, praise God from whom all blessings flow, and it, like, the whole choir is singing it, and it's like it's rising up, and it's just this really inspirational moment. And I just felt the presence of God, and I was like, I was about to go. I'd like let go of the front of the pew and put down my hymnal, and I heard a voice, and the voice said, "I'm here, but these are not your people." And I can't remember exactly what I did. I mean, I'd like to think that I was like, what? Are you serious? Like, what's going on? But I responded, I was really young. I was 9 years old. And I just had to say, okay, if I hear the voice of God and it says not here and not now, I have to follow and honor and obey that. I've already told you about lightning striking the trees. This is just a reminder for me to do that. But when I was 15 years old, I had decided, and the thing was, I grew up in this really magical place, but I just felt like my parents were the kind of earthly equivalent of J.K. Rowling's Muggles. I felt like they were pedantic and dull, and they didn't understand me. And so I had to leave. I had to get out of there. So I left my little forested cabin in this small town in Georgia, and I went to Atlanta. Now, this actually is a picture of Atlanta, and it's a more modern Atlanta than I ran away to, but it does have the feeling. Like, when I landed in that city, it was just like lights and lights and lights and lights, and it was just at that point in time, it was already the 16th largest city in the world. And it was overwhelming to me. But I stayed there. I got a job as a custom painter in a statuary factory. And at the end of that time, I was sort of an emancipated minor. I came back to the town that I was living in to go back to high school, because I put together the consequences of the kinds of jobs that I might be able to get if I didn't graduate from high school. And I said, oh, I think I'm going to go back and do that. Now, we're talking about divine timing today. So I want you to remember that moment when I examined what was happening in the physical world, and I made a different decision than I had made before, right? You're going to want to think about that as we talk about divine timing. So then when I get back to high school, I used to be the kid that everybody picked on, but then I ended up being the weird. I was kind of like a goth before there were goths, but I was only a goth on certain days. Like that on the days that I would wear black, which was, you know, like every third or fifth day, you know, then I would wear these long, you know, trench coats and these boots and these black outfits. I'd wear all black one day, and then the next day I'd wear all white, and I'd wear these like amulets around my neck. And that's Tom Cruise not Tom Cruise, but Brad Pitt on the right, not me. But he's got the idea too. See, he's wearing all white as well. But there are other stories, and if you come to my event, which I'll tell you about later in the call, The Power of Magic, then I'll tell you the full story of the 3 decision points that I made in the world to be able to get where I am today, being the headmaster of the School for Wizards. So today I've got 2 intentions, and you probably have guessed what they are. The first is to just give you everything I've got about divine timing and about the 4 worlds of creation, by where and by which everything is created. It's the same formula, manifesting, same formula. You know, get a job, you know, that you hate, same formula. The world gets created the same way every time. And if we understand how that is, then we can engage that for each of us. So number 1, I'm going to give you everything. I'm already starting, you see. Second is that I'm going to tell you more about how to engage with the School for Wizards at the end of the webinar. So, you know, because obviously you might want to do that if you are, if you're enjoying the material that you're getting. And, you know, the goal behind this webinar is not a sales goal, it's an education goal. So that's why the focus on this webinar is not just like everything in place to get you to purchase from me at the end. The goal is everything in place for you to actually learn something really profound so that you can continue on learning with the School for Wizards or some other way. But I'm committed to your personal spiritual evolution. So I'm a wizard, get over it. But here's the thing, you're a wizard too, get over it. You are born a wizard. You're born to do things that you get taught out of you when you're a child. And we get taught that that's normal. We get taught that it's normal. So you can actually say, even though I can't hear you, you could just say under your breath, maybe you're in a room where people could overhear you. Could you say, I'm a wizard? Just say, I'm a wizard. Because you are. It's really empowering to say that. So I want you to imagine that you are a wizard. Just do it. That you've been creating wizard magic, right? You've been actually living the way that human beings were designed to live for a year. And what does that mean that you're doing? What does that mean that you're having in your life when you're able to do that? You know, maybe you don't even know that yet, but this is why the imagine slide is up. What have you been creating for a year if you've truly been living your wizard self, right? And now, what about today, right? How much of your wizard self are you engaging? And what are you doing that's magical? What are you having that's magical? So I want you to get that this is possible for you to live a life that is more in tune with the life that you were designed to live, right? Okay, so the first thing that we need to do to understand divine timing is to understand the 4-fold world of creation. There's 4 worlds, literally, that have to get engaged in order for you to create something. And we are going to look at them in terms of the Hebrew letters. Now, Hebrew is a right to left reading language. So you want to read the symbol on the right first, which is a yod. It's the essential character in the Hebrew alphabet, which is often called the flame alphabet, right? This is the little lick of flame, right? Which, as we begin to explore this, we see that's really very appropriate because this element is fire. And then this next symbol is hay, spelled in English sometimes H-A-Y, sometimes H-E-Y, sometimes H-E-E-H, because, you know, there are no vowels in the Hebrew alphabet per se. It's sort of a crapshoot what you put there. So we'll learn more about what these symbols mean and why it's important that they be Hebrew characters instead of some other character. The next character, this thing that looks more like a lowercase l or a capital I, is actually Vav, V-A-V. And then you have Hey again. So Yad He Vav He, or Yahweh, as it's sometimes abbreviated. Okay, but what does this actually mean? So here is the Yad, which means open hand. Yad means open hand. Here is the first He, which means window. Here is the Vav, which means hook or nail. And here is the fourth Vav, which obviously means window again. So we're going to look at these in terms of several different ways that we can describe creation. So if we look at these in terms of the elements, I'm just going to give you a little preview of it right now. You have fire at the top, which is a masculine element, represented often by the color red. The second He is feminine in nature. The window here is represented in this position by water. The hook or nail is another masculine symbol, represented here by the element air and the color yellow, even though we're not using the colors here. We'll show you what those look like later. And then finally, the second window is representing the earth element. And the color here is often black or green or muted colors, okay? So each of these elements is associated with a card in the tarot deck. Now, the tarot is a teaching tool for Kabbalah, and the tarot is a teaching tool, obviously, if you're talking about Kabbalah. It's talking about also the association with this worlds of creation as well, right? So these cards I want to show you are associated with it. These are the teaching tools that we're using, okay? So the Hermit is representing Yod, or the open hand. Remember also the element of fire, the act of inspiration. Okay, now notice the Hermit actually has an open hand, and he's showing his open hand toward you, and that open hand has a six-pointed star in it. It's also got light emanating from it. And so just notice what this figure in this card is doing. He's standing there with this thing called a triscala, which is this three-pointed spear thing. And he's dressed in the clothes of a sadhu, or someone who is paying attention at all times to the divine. Paying attention at all times to the divine. So the He is associated with the emperor, which is, even though the emperor is a masculine card, He is a feminine aspect when you're looking at the way that the worlds get created. The Vav, which means hook or nail, is represented by the Hierophant card. So notice the difference. Like, what is the difference between an emperor and a hierophant, right? So the hierophant is this hook or nail, and the hierophant really, it's an odd word, right? They used to call it the Pope, but what they mean by the hierophant is the intermediary between the divine and the human world, right? So this is in this deck, which is the Sage Tarot deck, the character has all of these symbols, representing the alchemical elements and the planets and the Roman numerals and the zodiac, right? So here we've got an example of this real intermediary who's like taking these symbols and making them meaningful. And this is really important when we think about the way that this Yahe serves as a way of how do I explain this? It's, well, I'll just go to the last hay, and then we'll give an example, because that'll really help you to understand how these worlds work. So this is the Emperor card here. So if we look at these in order, it's the Hermit, the Emperor, the Hierophant, and the Emperor. So let's have an example of baking a cake, right? So what we want to do is bake a cake. And what are the Kabbalistic worlds that the cake baking has to move through in order for you to actually bake this darned cake? Okay, so number one, there is a world called Atzilut. Now, Atzilut is, you'll see it spelled a whole bunch of different ways, but this is the way I'm spelling it, Atziluth, and it is the world of emanation. Right? So this is the world of inspiration, right? Inspiration usually comes from the divine, and inspiration comes from what we call the uninvoked masculine, right? This is the sort of aha, the idea, the impulse to do something. That is the world of emanation. And I'll show you where it is on the Tree of Life. Now, I thought for a long time about whether to introduce the Tree of Life to you in this call, but I've decided to do it, and I'm hoping that it's not going to overwhelm you. So just realize that the first world is this world of emanation. Think I'll bake a cake, right? And notice here, I did my best to try and find a cake that was as unformed as possible. It's like we don't yet know what kind of cake we're baking. What is the kind of cake that we want to bake, right? So then we get into another world in order to decide that, which is Bria, sometimes spelled Beria, B-E-R-I-A-H, but this is how I'm spelling it, Bria, B-R-I-A-H. And this is where we decide, what kind of cake shall I bake, right? So, you can see in the back, this is almost like a decision tree, or like in the back there's all sorts of like cake rolls and cupcakes and sort of pie-like cakes, and cakes of different flavors with toppings, and and then in the second one it's like, okay, all these are actual layer cakes, and they're like either 2 or 4 layers, and they're each like a different flavor, right? And one of those flavors is chocolate, right? And so then in the episode with, or the drawing, the episode with 4 cakes in it, it's like they're all chocolate cakes. Well, there's all sorts of chocolate cakes you could bake. And then finally, the cake that we're actually going to bake is this cake with, this drippy frosting on the top layer and the second layer, and maybe it's a birthday cake. So, we've decided on specifically what we want. Now, I cannot emphasize clearly enough how important this is, right? We've gone through all the cakes and we've decided we want this specific kind of cake, because guess what? You cannot bake a cake, you cannot have a recipe for a cake unless you know the kind of cake that you want, right? Now, I frequently we'll say, okay, I want banana bread, and I want banana bread that's gluten-free, that doesn't have any nuts, that also I can make without any dairy, and has low sugar. So, then I have to really be very specific about the kind of cake that I want to bake, or the kind of bread in that case that I want to bake. This is such an important piece of manifestation. And the people that only know the law of attraction, which is just one of the many laws of the metaphysical universe and world, is they say, know specifically and exactly what you want. Don't shift it around. The universe can't deliver you the cake unless it knows what kind of cake you're making. So guess what? Also, if I say I want a cake instead of I want to bake a cake, if I say I want a cake and you say I want a chocolate cake with 2 layers and I want the top and the bottom drippy, and you tell somebody that, you can tell them precisely the kind of cake that you want. And then they have a chance of baking it for you, right? You have a chance of getting that cake as a gift. Then we've got the world of Yetzirah, or formation. Now, this is the work of planning the cake, and a lot of people get confused here because they're like, okay, well, is the planning actually taking the bowl of flour and the stick of butter and the sugar and the sour cream and whatever and putting it out in little bowls on the countertop to get ready to bake the cake? Well, no, you're already in the next world if you do that. But this is the planning phase, right? And every bit of our moral construction, our love, our emotions, our mind, the astral world where we're, saying, oh, I wonder, if I don't have any vanilla, do I have neighbors that have vanilla? There's all this planning that has to happen before we actually bake the cake. And then finally, we have the world of asaya, or action, which is the making of the cake, mixing the chocolate and the other ingredients and then pouring it into the pan and putting it in the oven. And, here our cake doesn't look exactly like the cake that we had on the other page, because it's got frosting on the top and the middle, but it's not all drippy down the sides. It's like more of a like cleaner kind of frosting that you would expect from a chocolate cake, but it's pretty much how we planned it, right? Now, whether or not you're making the cake or whether you're telling somebody about the cake and they're making it for you, that's the thing. Once you get into the world of asaya, the world of action, then there are a lot of other people in this world with us, right? The other worlds all happen in the unconscious, or in the mind, or on the moral plane, or on the supernal plane, where they're happening in the divine, and haven't even, which includes our mind, but does not include our mind exclusively. All right, I don't want to confuse you. So I want to say, okay, what is divine timing? Divine timing is we plan and the universe does. So let's go back to the planning phase. So this is actually the planning phase. So we've got an idea, inspiration, we decide what kind of cake we want to make, and then here's this planning phase. Unless we are engaged in this planning phase, whether that planning phase is making sure that you tell the person who's agreed to bake the cake for you exactly what kind of cake you want, or whether it's you're actually going to sit down and bake the cake yourself. Huge amounts of energy have to go into this world of Yetzirah, or formation. If we don't do this, nothing will happen. Now, is it true that when we get to the phase of cake baking, that our oven might blow up or be at the wrong temperature and our cake burns instead of baking correctly? Well, yes. Is it possible that an earthquake could happen on the day that you're making the cake and you can't make the cake? Well, yes. Is it possible that you are missing one or more of the ingredients and none of your neighbors has them and you can't get them, and so you have to postpone making the cake? Yes, right? Because all those things are in the physical world. And divine timing, and here's your first hint about divine timing. Divine timing means that you are in a world with other beings, right? There's only one being. You're part of it. The illusion is of your separateness, right? So you think that something is wrong, right? Remember, the universe doesn't have problems. Only we have problems because we have these expectations. So let's now look at the way that the tree of life works. Okay, so there are probably 6 weeks of teaching that we could do on, or 60 years of teaching that we could do on the tree of life and on the pathways of the tree of life. But let's just say that for now, the important parts of this tree of life are not these multicolored lines that connect the dots or connect the spheres, or as they're called, sephira. The spheres are called sephira. Let's say that we're not so involved in those, but we are involved in the spheres. And you'll notice that the top is number 1, and then we go to the right for number 2 to number 3 on the left, then to number 4 on the right, which is the blue one, to number 5, the red one on the left, then down to the yellow one, which is called beauty, and then down to victory, which is 7, the green one on the lower right, and then 8 on the orange one on the left, and then the purple one, foundation, and then down to number 10. Well, here's the thing. Number 1 is the all and everything, undifferentiated potential. And number 10 is the physical world, right? The rest of the other 8 sephira between the all and everything and the world that we live in are all the steps that it takes for the divine to get down to matter. And then, of course, if in our evolutionary process, from matter to get up to the divine, right? So the downward motion is called involution. The upward motion is called evolution. So spirit goes down into matter. Matter then goes back to spirit in an evolutionary process. So where are the worlds according to this map? So the top 3 sephira, the white, the gray, and the black, are in the supernal triad, which means that they're above anything in our world, right? They are they're composed of the crown, wisdom, and understanding. And the crown is undifferentiated everything, right? Nothing can be seen from that. And then nothing can be known from that. Nothing can be heard or felt or, detected with any sense that we have. Number 2 is how the universe then differentiates itself into something. There is potential. There's a movement towards something. And that sephira is the one that's associated with the first cabalistic world, emanation. The second sephira that is associated with the second world, bria, is understanding, right? And it's very interesting because, you know, the book of Genesis where, you know, in the beginning, right? Everything that's there happens from this third Sephira. This is the portion of the divine that actually creates, right? So that is the second cabalistic world. Now, this will probably not surprise you if you've been paying attention. All of the rest of them, including this invisible Sephira that you can see, you know, but beneath and between wisdom and understanding, it's called the invisible Sephira because it's knowledge, but it doesn't actually exist on the tree. It's just this invisible thing that is in the void between the supernal triad and the moral triad. So everything, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, plus this little extra guy that doesn't have a number, all of that is the world of Yetzirah. All right, I'm going to show you this in the next slide. Here we go. So the red that you can see is Atziluth, emanation, right? That happens with wisdom, Chokmah. Then it moves over into the world of Bria, where you decide, like in the beginning could not have happened unless something specific was going to be created, right? That is that specificity, right? And then all the stuff that needs to happen for that creation to occur is centered around this sphere, this yellow sphere of beauty. This yellow sphere of beauty. And this Tiferet, or beauty, is often called Christ consciousness. Right? So another hint as to how you might be able to create what you want is to create from this Christ consciousness. And so what does that mean? It means creating for the greatest good of all, right? Creating from the greatest good of all. So that is how the worlds operate on the tree. Now, if you don't understand very much about the tree, then don't worry about it because this is mainly in here for people who already understand a little bit about the tree of life. But I'm going to talk to you about how stuff shows up and what to pay attention to when that stuff does show up. So here is what to do. All right. So first of all, look for what shows up. It might not be what you expected to show up, but it is showing up from the plans that you actually made, along with everything else that's in action on the earth plane, right? Like I said before, you think of yourself as an individual, but you're actually part of a whole that is part of a bigger whole that is part of a bigger whole, right? And that's WHOLE, like, you know, in terms of wholeness, right? What you contribute is only part of the picture, which is why having a successful outcome often means prefacing what you want. And we're talking about things that are more complex or perhaps more spiritual than just baking a cake. What you contribute to that, like to world peace, you know, to ending world hunger, is only a part of the picture, right? You want to keep your eyes open for something that's showing up at a higher level than what you were thinking about. Sometimes you just get exactly what you ask for. And if you don't, what you want to do is look for something that's showing up at a higher level than the level you were thinking about, right? Now, here's the thing. Sometimes divine timing has to destroy something that's not working to create something that will work, right? Often when we start out a project, you didn't see this. And the thing that you did or that you didn't do, right? But those events were set in motion by your planning. Remember, you plan, we plan, and the universe does, right? The universe cannot engage and do its thing without you setting your planning in motion. And even though, and you can tell I'm going to have a little bit of a beef with the simplistic version of the law of attraction, because oftentimes law of attraction people go, well, all I did was just like think it in my head and want it, and it just happened. Well, in every case there was some planning that went on, and either they didn't tell you about the planning they did because they didn't think it was important, or very much like Jack Canfield did with his first book, he already had a big stack of those books in his garage, and he just met the woman from National Enquirer, who then put the ad or the article in National Enquirer, and then caused an exposure to a whole bunch of people, and then he ended up selling all of the books that he had in his garage. Well, unless he had planned to make that book, unless he'd written that book and had a whole bunch of them in his garage, then that meeting with that so-called chance meeting, which was really synchronicitous with the woman from the National Enquirer, never would have happened. Or it would have happened with no results, right? So those events were set in motion by his planning, right? Not his doing, right? He thought he was going to do something else. He thought he was going to sell those books, however, by whatever means he thought. But in fact, the universe was the thing that delivered, but not without his planning first. Okay, so notice why something shows up. If it isn't what you expected, then notice what you contributed that was unconscious. Now, of course, we don't know what's unconscious sometimes, right? If you don't know, or if you can't suspect, then ask someone close to you who you trust to tell you the truth, to tell you what they think you did to help create the results that showed up. And oftentimes your friends will be like, oh yeah, well, it's when you did this. And then you'll do the head smack thing, like, oh God, that, oh yeah, right? And also when you do this, you want to notice what did show up, right? Oftentimes we're waiting around forever for the divine, right? We're like, okay, I'm looking at my watch, what's all right, divine, I'm ready for you to deliver. But the divine has already delivered what you asked for. It's just that you asked for it a different way than you thought you did, right? Or it delivered on a whole different channel. So it gave you exactly what you wanted, but it gave it to you in such an unusual way that you can't even see it. So keep your eyes open. Divine timing sometimes has to wait for natural processes to occur before it delivers what you ask for. So, for instance, if a child asks for something that is adult, often the divine will just require the child to grow into an adult that can handle it before delivering what's asked for. And it doesn't necessarily mean that the child has to grow into an actual, adult. Some children mature much quicker than others, right? I was ready to have a full-time job and the responsibilities of a full-time job when I was 15 years old. And people frequently would tell me that they thought I was lying and telling them that I was 18, but they would often tell me that I seemed like I was 21 or 25. because of the level of my maturity. So it doesn't mean that I had to actually be an adult before the universe could deliver me my full-time job. It just meant that I had to act like one. So also notice how something shows up. Now, how it shows up is clearly and indicative of your planning and the other things that are going on in the environment, right? What the universe can deliver is often shaped by circumstances. And this is the thing. People are like, okay, I'm expecting a miracle and I'm going to get a miracle. And yes, absolutely. I am 100% with you on expecting the miracle. But let's just say that you are saying, okay, I want my event to be sold out. But you've actually forgotten that you're in a war-torn area of the world and people with machine guns are mowing people down in the street. So you actually might not fill your event unless your event has something to do with the streets, either stopping the violence in the street, continuing the violence in the street if it's for a cause that the people that you serve are all about, working around the violence in the street because sometimes people need to know, and they might actually brave the environment to come out and do something like that. But you have to recognize that the laws of the universe still have to be obeyed. You know, I had a client who was like, okay, God's telling me that I'm going to have 500 people at this event in a children's gymnasium. And she was forgetting about the fact that 500 people are not going to show up at her event just because God says so. Uh-oh. I think we just lost our thing. Hang on a sec. There we go. I don't know what happened. I think I must have just gotten excited and the page shifted. But we saw the hermit for a moment. So my client was like, God says 500 people are showing up, and so I'm going to believe God. And I'm like, look, God that may very well be true, but unless 500 people know about this event, 500 people can't show up, right? And so there could be a miracle that says, okay, it goes into a county-wide PTA meeting and it's something that all parents and children want to come to, and boom, you've got your instant 500 people. But you've got to do the planning, right? If God says you don't have to do any planning, I'm just going to show up, then you might want to think about the messages that you're receiving. Sometimes you do receive messages, but those are coming from the divine, where time doesn't really matter that much, right? So here is the rest of that quote, okay? And here it is. Everything that happens here happens not only for the purpose we give it, but as something arising from higher principles. So when something doesn't manifest in the timing that we wish for it, it is hung up in those previous worlds. So I'm going to go backwards now, or at least I think I am. There we go. So let's go back to the cake example. So if I can't, I've got my friends having a birthday, I can't decide what I want to do, I have no ideas, then I'm stuck at emanation because I just have no clue as to what to do, right? How is timing going to work for that? It's not going to happen, right? It's stuck in the world of emanation. You have to think, I'm going to bake a cake before something can happen. If you can't decide what kind of cake to bake, then you are stuck in the world of Bria, or the world of creation, where you're constantly recycling. And I call this being stuck in the candy store, right? You know, you're stuck in the candy store because you just can't decide, oh, a chocolate cake's good. But then, ooh, what about a lemon cake? Oh, that would be good too. And then, what about a raspberry cake? That would be good. So then you're stuck in the world of Bria. And the way that we can get stuck in the most complex ways is this world of planning. And here's why. Because all of these sephira, mercy, severity, beauty, victory, and splendor, which represent our emotional world and our mental world, and foundation, which represents the astral world, are all caught up in that. So we could have some hang up in the astral world. We could have some mental or emotional block. We could have a moral problem. You know, like I can't conscience baking a cake with chocolate from Africa because people are oppressed when they make it, right? So all of this can be eliminating your timing from happening. But once we're in a saya, then it's much closer to happening, even if it happens in a flawed way. Like even if your oven temp is too high, or your oven breaks, or your neighbors don't have the eggs or whatever, you're much closer to having it there, right? So divine timing can actually be determined by determining where in this process of creation you are, because then it will let you show up in the way that you need to show up. So we're obviously going to go a little bit past an hour today. I'm hoping that that's okay with you. It's very hard, I've discovered, to deliver a webinar in an hour. You usually need about an hour and 10 minutes or something to do that. It's our imagination that sets us apart, because we create, right? Other animals can't really do this. You know, they're not as tuned in to the process of creation as we are. We're the ones that can do this. So I just want to remind you, you are a creator. You can do this. So here are the 3 takeaways that I want you to take away from the webinar. The fourfold world of creation is your invitation to a full table, right? It's your invitation to have what you want, in other words. The second thing I want you to take away is that our job is to plan and see what shows up. Plan thoroughly and wait to see what shows up. And when it does, I guess I didn't type the rest of this. See what shows up. And when it does, be grateful. I didn't talk about gratitude so much, but what you do want to do is be grateful. And I want to share something with you, which is that there is a yearly annual event that happens. It's called the Power of Magic, and it happens usually somewhere in the San Francisco Bay Area. You know, last year it happened in Sausalito near the ocean. It's my commitment to you to have this thing happen in a place that is very near nature, because so much of our work has to do with being in nature and being in touch with the creatures of nature. So all you need to do is to show up at theschoolforwizards.com/magic101, and that's the numbers 101 dash NOV for November 2016. So it's basically November 2016. So Magic 101 dash NOV 2016. That is after theschoolforwizards.com. And when you go there, you'll be able to see everything that's available. And I'm going to teach you about the worlds of creation. I'm going to teach you about prayers. And we're going to also have an amazing ritual for those people who've been in the School for Wizards for a year. They're going to graduate. I'm going to actually, oh dear. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm back with you. All right. Back with my orange curtain. So what will happen is that those people will actually graduate from a year's study in the School for Wizards, and they are going to do their wand initiation. And last year, the woman who was doing wand initiation last year said it was the most powerful thing that had happened to her since her wedding. The power of these events is astonishing. And what you get, the level of healing that you get, is also astonishing. So I am really, really grateful to you for spending this time with me. And I think what I want to do is I'm going to share the screen again by going to that page and just giving you a little bit of a kind of intro to what the Power of Magic event really is all about. So just one second, let me enter it. There we go, -NOV. I'll test my URL this way too. NOV 2016. Okay, here we go. There we go. Okay, so I'm now gonna share this with you so you can get a sense of it. I'm gonna end up doing the weird woo all the way back into infinity. And here we go. All right. So here's my screen. If something's out of whack, even after all your coaching and training, I will in these 3 days, I will teach you the magical skills that will help you create a sustainable ecological life and business, right? It's not going to teach you cheap tricks. What I'm about is actually helping to craft you into someone who is capable of doing the impossible. Really important, right? And there's a whole bunch of stuff. I define wizard and magic. You know, if you want to learn how to run your business ecologically, live your life the way it was supposed to be lived, if you want to activate the power of love and magnetism, you know, if you want to activate curiosity and creativity, like understand more about how the 4 cabalistic worlds operate and how you can manifest what you want inside of that, come do this, right? It's about harnessing the invisible power, right? I tell you a little bit about my story. I tell you about we go into the path of creation, right? Which is about manifestation. And there's another event that I do around manifestation, but this gives you the basics for manifestation. We also teach spells, or the path of personal power, right? You'll learn what you need to do, anything, right? That this will give you fast guidance, the scientific reason why magic actually works, the structure to create magic that works to get what you want. You'll learn incantations, what actually happens when you make a request of God, how to protect yourself when you stir up powerful forces in the universe. Really, really important. We're going to do that at the beginning of the workshop. And we're also going to teach you what kind of prayers work best for getting results. And then we're going to talk a lot about and actually do rituals, which are models of magic, right? So rituals on the models of magic path will show you how to create a model for anything that you want and then have the universe deliver that. You'll learn the 5-fold structure for every ritual, and you can include that in almost anything that you do in your life. You're going to learn actually how your community contributes to your wealth. We'll also do a lot of work with the Sage Tarot deck, which you can see right here. Then we're also going to finally work with correspondences, which is the path of invisible power, right? 4 simple words that will change your life, why the universe wants to deliver wealth to you. And then there are 22 archetypes, and I'm going to share with you why they have remained hidden in plain sight for hundreds of years. So there's plenty of people who will tell you that this event changed their life. I have one woman who's like, what happened to me was so profound at this event that I can't even write anything about it. You just have to have people call me and I will tell them how it changed my life. Her entire life shifted when she came to this event. And she constantly tells me, you know, that's when everything changed for me. It was right when I did that event with you. So this is the event to do. If you're elsewhere in the world, then, you know, book a flight, come be with us. The event is only $497, which includes all meals, and does not include accommodation, but accommodation is easy to get. If you want to add it in, you can add accommodation in for a small additional fee, but I've done my best to keep this workshop at a low cost, and it's at this low cost until October 20th, and then it goes up. It's the early bird pricing, so that you can take advantage of that now. It's November 18th to 20th, the week before American Thanksgiving. Really easy to do, and last year we had a blast and our lives changed. So come join me for that if you want. Remember everything I taught you today. Please respond. Let me know how you liked this webinar and what you'd like to see more in the future. And with that, I am going to say goodbye. I love you. Take care and be well.